Hello everyone, my name is Ritual. Most of you know me as the head developer for NSMRS. Today I'm going to be showing off what could have been TMU or the maintenance update if we had followed through with its release and not followed through with the discontinuation of the game. Um, so yeah, without further ado, let's go. Uh, oh yeah, bit of a disclaimer. Sector C is mostly untouched, or was mostly untouched during development, so there isn't really anything significantly new over there. So we will mainly just be focusing on Sector B, which was the center of attention for what the update would have been. Um, so yeah, figured I'd just get out of the way. The only really new thing in Sector C would be posters, but they're nothing too magical. So yeah, let's take a look-see. So over here would have been a set of changing rooms or transitioning rooms where visitors would be able to drop off their stuff before heading into the more sensitive area of the facility, the reactor sector. Um, as you can see, we never actually got to building them, as you'll see with a lot, which is a common trend with with the current build here. But yeah, there would have been a set of lockers on either side here where you'd be able to drop your stuff off before heading into the main sector. Um, oh yeah, that's also another thing. Some of these doors are broken. Most of them work, I think, like this one does. But I think the bottom side labs area is an area where most of the doors won't work, so I'll probably just have to free cam my way in there. But that's fine. This area would have been like a bit more of like a chillaxing area for employees. Just sit down, have a chat. We may have also had like a small canteen here. This area overlooks what would have been the fuel processing station. So you have two uh, small cylindric centrifuge. I don't know how you would call these things. During development, I was looking mainly at the Hadron Collider from QSurf, or Quantum Science Energy Research Facility, and I was actually having a lot of issues with staying away and staying original. So some of these models look a bit eh. They don't meet my standards anymore. This update was also the first update where I actually started using Blender. So if you see something that looks very detailed, chances are it has a lot of parts because the only thing I was really making in Blender at the time were these pipes. Everything else, chances are it has numerous, if not hundreds, of parts in it. But yeah, this area was a little bit of a chillaxing area where you'd be able to sit down, talk with your friends or coworkers. We got another screen as like the others around the place. This one shows reactor operations info, but I think there will be another variant which would show outside temperature information or information relevant to the sector, like I don't know, power generation, stuff like that. Uh, then over here would have been just an airlock going to Sector A. Sublevel 1 for Sector B was mainly just like a bypass route. Most of the stuff is in Sublevel 2, or all of the stuff is in Sublevel 2 besides the overview area there. But as you can see, the airlock was supposed to be here, and then the turbine hull was built here. So as you can see, the airlock's over there because I moved it over there during development. Um, but yeah, this would have been where it is. Uh, that brick is supposed to be blocking the entrance up, but it's unanchored, so that's why it's laying like that. Um, yeah, you have two elevators that would go down. We have these magical bricks because most of the elevators, I don't think the elevators work. Last time I checked, the elevator script was broken due to uh parenting issues. Well, not parenting issues necessarily, but when we built stuff, a lot of stuff got moved around, so scripts weren't where they were supposed to be, and so scripts errored out and stuff's broken a bit. Oh, hey, that works. But, yeah, elevator, sector bypass, and sector B services. So that would have been labeled. That thing's loud. Uh, Technically speaking, sector B is facility services. So, yeah. We'll start off over here. Over here's the emergency and auxiliary capacitors. Another trope, what I was trying to do was not using diesel generators because diesel equal bad. So instead of doing that, I used capacitor banks. Now, capacitors are known for storing energy and then quickly discharging it. So in reality, this should have normally or should have been labeled as auxiliary supercapacitors, if anything. But in reality, these are just glorified battery banks. The auxiliary capacitor banks would have been charged via the primary grid, or yeah, the primary grid. So any power produced by the reactor that wasn't being used would have gone over here to be charging these circuits or these batteries. Um, th that or I think the topside laboratories, if they were to be built, uh, there would be a small area where we have some wind turbines and solar panels, where those would also be used to charge the auxiliary grid. So, in retrospect, the auxiliary grid is basically just a glorified backup battery bank like the emergency reserve is. Uh, so, for those of you who have played NSMS during the winter seasons, when we had the thermodynamic anchoring event, this is what it's referring to during the last phase of the sequence, where it mentions that the emergency capacitors are unable to operate in the sub-zero conditions. So these banks would be the ones that would be started, which would be operating under rated load because of the cold temperatures. But yeah, we have 3 indicator lights on them. The unit being active, the unit is charging, or the unit's faulty, which I guess would just mean that the battery bank isn't working as it should. And a interesting looking keyhole. Yeah, obviously, and then labeling if that wasn't enough on the wall there. Over here we have the facility control station labeled as B. There would have been one of these in Sector C as well, probably somewhere, maybe adjacent or like on the opposite side of where the auxiliary control room is, or maybe it would be part of the auxiliary control room. Either way, this door is anchored, but it does work because because of my janky solution or problem solving skills. Because what players would do is they stand in the corner and then use the door swing up to clip out of the map. So, but me, instead of changing the direction of the doors, which would have been like a very easy fix, I instead chose to make it that the doors basically turn their collision off when they're in motion. Which I guess solves the problem, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure you'd still be able to get the clipping effect if you were determined enough. Regardless, if we go in here, we can see the humanoid thing, rig, whatever you want to call it. And then you'd be able to also see the grid control screen. Now, in most games, like QSER, for example, we're going to use that a lot here. In most games, you have a physical switch that you use to change the grid. In NSMRS, the idea was that you'd come to one of these facility control stations, and then you'd use you'd switch to the facility grid controls tab, and then you'd have the auxiliary grid, the primary grid, or the external grid to use. External would have been what you'd use by default, but with the use of the facility operations fund, you'd be chewing away at the facility operations fund while you're using it, which you technically don't want unless you're trying to get the final nail as a badge. Because that's how you bankrupt the company. But yeah, as you can see, the grid is currently using the game is currently using or the facility is currently running on the auxiliary grid. I think this is only done during development though, because as I just said, you would be using the external by default. Uh, but here you can see the facility demand, the facility grid generation, and the grid stability. So grid stability would probably just be a measurement of how reliable stuff is. So as we just saw that there were some fault lights on the capacitor banks, so if some of those were to turn on, your reliability on the grid would start falling. And then yeah, and then the primary grid one would probably come into effect in a similar fashion where the before you push the reactor outside of its safe limits, the stability of the grid also comes into question. And then down here you have the auxiliary grid, which just shows where the power is coming from. Right now it's coming from the converters, which would be the topside solar panel array, and wind turbines. So that's where power ideally in this sense is coming from. This is how much power they're generating, and this is how much power is currently in the battery banks. Now, as you can see, grid generation, 7,450 kilowatts of power coming from the solar arrays and the wind turbines alone seems a bit bloated or inflated, but I'm not one to judge my past decisions. Uh, so we're just going to pretend that number is acceptable for this sense because, yeah. Right before we get in here, I'm going to show off this little storage room. Nothing significant in here besides these little capsules that have like elements in them. So over here we have one that has francium, tritium. I think that one says fluorine. I think that one says cheese right now. Some of these are Easter eggs. Yeah, soap and cheese. That one was added in by one of our developers. And then one of them is also a reference to the DTX. Yeah, DTX, which is also a reference to Astral Industries' as a game, Energy Research Hub, which is what, and yeah, DTX is the fuel that their reactor runs off. I think it's called thermal injection plasma reactor. Though at the time of this recording, I don't think that game's canon anymore because they're currently undergoing a revamp of the game, and the reactor design's also been changed. But from what I recall, DTX is still the fuel source for it, so yeah, that's a little bit of a tidbit from that game in here. Because Astra did work for us while this game was in development. So we'll walk in here for now. As you can see, the room is way bigger than it needs to be. This area, this little like section that's been lowered here, wasn't like that earlier. I ended up lowering it just so the room wasn't as big. It's still as big. I think the space is a bit more well managed. There's a wedge lying on the floor, but we're going to ignore that. If we go over here to cell quantity, or the field processor controls, you can see that you'd be able to generate up to 2 at once, and then you'd also be able to select whether or not the cell will be delivered directly to Sector C via the pneumatic chutes, which is actually another thing. In Sector C, there is a receptacle on the cargo airlock level, I think. Hold on, let me see if we can free cam over there. One time we're gonna do this. I think it's down here. Yeah. So in here, there would have been, yeah, right here. So over here, you would have been able to like request a cell remotely, and then after a few minutes, it would come out of this little hole in the floor. But yeah, obviously, as it says, these cell types are placeholders, obviously. Um, all right, I'm back. I accidentally killed the stream when I was trying to get out of free cam. I clicked Control P instead of Shift P, so my OBS stopped recording instead of me getting out of free cam. Oh well. Getting back to what we were doing. You'd be able to So, as I just said, two cells could be made at once at max. You could select whether or not the cells be delivered directly over there, and you could just select the cells from over there. Though I think from over there you wouldn't be able to not set it to deliver, and that was a limit of one as well, I think. Um, Injectants, I don't know if I think this is the only tab that this screen actually shows. But down here is also an estimated time of completion. I think it would have taken 5 minutes for one cell to be processed, or maybe 4 or 5 minutes, I think is what I remember. Uh, and then you'd be able to make your own presets as well somehow. So using the injections tab, you'd be able to grab up to 4 of the containers from over here, like 4 of these at max. You'd be able to bring them over here and then like combine them to make cell variants. And that would make cells that were either more efficient or more power dense, for example. And you'd be able to save them via the presets tab. And then load them up as well. I don't know what the system was, to be honest. I'm presuming that would be some form of a software update thing, because I think that was also another thing we were thinking of, where certain systems would require software updates after a while, or periodic updates to make sure that the cells were produced correctly and stuff like that. But either way, that's what this was. And this is, then yeah, I did also add a brick up here so people couldn't directly jump on top of it. We also got a really weird looking gauge. These gauges are so old. This is made entirely from frames and such that inside Studio. Like none of this is from like uploaded or whatever. This is all Studio elements and frames, which is now looking back at it very painful because I now make radial gauges with a program called Affinity. So if I were to go about this, I probably would have used that program if I knew about it. Anyway, these cell container things is what I think they were directly copied from over here, if I recall correctly, unless the new reactor. I think the Mark III is in this world version actually. Never mind. I was about to say, I'm pretty sure I yanked the containers from this and then just threw them into the reactor structure, but I'm pretty sure it was the other way around. So, yeah. But as you can see, very interesting structure. We got pipes running in here, we got pipes running out there, and this little spinny thing. I don't understand how it would have worked. And then we got an exact replica right over here. And then this is obviously capsule pneumatic networks, so that would have been shot up and then brought over to Sector C. Yeah, wedge on the floor, we've already been over that. Same dealio over here, and then there's 2 other ones here. Baja Blast, Mountain Dew, Supply, or Baja Blast, I think it's not Baja Blast, whatever. But yeah, that's also a tidbit. Oh, okay, both of these got changed. I thought it was only one of them. Okay. I know this one got changed. Hywell changed this one. Like, Hywell was a developer for us, and I know he changed one of these, or I changed it for him. I don't even know anymore. Regardless, I know this one was changed, but I don't remember this one being changed. So this one must have been recent, or it was just something I never noticed. That's funny. And here is the control room for this area, which is literally just a computer that allows you to shut the machines down if something were to go wrong. So I don't know. I think the plan was to make one variant that if you found it, it could like cause the machine to overheat or something. There's obviously like no temperature rating on here, so we wouldn't be able to do that, get it from that. But I think like overproduction or like accidentally creating one variant would cause the machine to overheat, and you'd have to like run in here and shut the machine down or something like that, or deactivate it. Or you could just do something like parental controls where you just deactivate if people are abusing it. I don't quite remember what the idea was with that. Assorted cables. Oh yeah, and then there's Providence Technology Division. Uh, Providence was, I think, Scorch. Yes, Scorch is a in-lore company, which is actually really funny because Providence and Vortex get used interchangeably in this game. Like, Vortex and Providence basically deliver the exact same things because while we were making the game, Providence kept being pulled in and out of the in-game universe, if I recall correctly. If Scorch, if you're watching this, you can correct me on that in the comments. But yeah, if I recall correctly, Providence and Vortex were just like basically in a war, cause for getting Nova's attention and delivering assets to them, which I think is interesting. But I think that's everything over here besides the maintenance office, actually. This is where the maintenance department would have spawned, and yeah, you'd be able to sit down, have a chat with your mates or something. And up here would have also been a screen that shows you the facility uptime, the reactor integrity, and then the facility integrity. So if you've played NSMers, I think most of us have. If you're watching this and you're interested in this, um, facility integrity was originally was going to be the determining factor in Sierra Delta's activation. In game, it like in the current public version, there's an in-game timer that starts a 40-minute countdown once the reactor is brought online, and that timer is actually a bit bugged because I think people have already achieved it numerous times where Sierra Delta activates during a meltdown or a different event, unfortunately. Um, but that putting that to the side, facility integrity would have basically been determined on how well maintenance does its job of repairing stuff like leaking pipes and fixing electrical boxes and all that stuff. But if they were not to do that, the level would eventually get so low that velocity would basically be like, "Hey, the facility is not safe to work here anymore. You guys need to leave." And there was actually a chance for Sierra Delta Act to actually fail. There's a voice line in the game files as well that I just ended up never using because I just never implemented a condition that would determine that. But basically, if integrity got low enough, Sierra Delta would activate, and then there was a small chance that Sierra Delta would fail to activate. I think it was unconditional for the sake of fairness, or it was going to be unconditional. But if Sierra Delta were to not be able to be activated, the game would switch over to the facility collapse event after 5 minutes. So basically, Sierra Delta would fail, and then players would be told, and then maintenance would be told they have like 5 minutes to do a quick rush of repairs around the facility before the facility collapse event starts. If they were to fix it and then integrity were to fall again, Sierra Delta would not be prompted to activate, and it would just go straight into facility collapse. Yeah, I think this is actually the first poster we see here, but yeah, very basic. There was no standard. I think I just gave people this template in the Discord server, and they were just told to use or just fill it up. I think that's also the second reason why I ended up just not using majority of them, because there was such a variance in fonts and text size that I was just like, okay, yeah, this was a mistake. So if I end up doing that later down the line again, which I might do for Riverton, yeah, I don't know. I actually lost my thought. Hold on. Right. If I end up doing this for Riverton, I'm probably just going to give them a poster, and then if anything, give them a font to use and a text size. And then anything that doesn't follow that will just not be used. Or even better, I just tell them to give me a text blob, and then I'll do it myself. But regardless, besides this integrity information, you also have this little box which will be filled with messages from Velocity or players, which uh or like players as in maintenance requests sent in by players. Oh hey, look, Mocha joined. Mocha was actually a different developer, but yeah. Actually, hold on 1 second. All right, back to what we were doing. So in here would have been a desktop that allows you to basically pre-order parts or order parts for repairs. I think right now there was just coolant and reactor components and Zentin plus reactants. So another thing is that for whatever reason I decided that NSMRS is not going to be connected to any form of lake and just going to have two giant tanks for its cooling supply. So you'd have to periodically order coolant and they'd come in giant trucks and they'd fill the tanks. Um, and the order quantity was 2,500 liters per, which I don't. Why is that red? Actually, adequate, but it's red. I don't know anymore. That's actually a steal. I'm pretty sure coolant or like I don't know, coolant is usually just water. But 2,500 liters for 6,500. I can't tell if that's a good deal or if that's just a scam. Okay, I'm not gonna delve into logic. I shouldn't be delving into logic, but yeah. Regardless, coolant, reactor components, or Zentin plus reactants is what you'd be able to order. And then you have status of the reactor, the tank in use, and then the coolant capacity. Um, I think the tanks, I think as long as you're using the other tank, you could be filling a tank while the reactor's online, or it was the other way around where the reactor had to be offline for either tank refills, which I think would be a lot more logical, but knowing me, that probably wasn't the case. In here was where maintenance would have spawned, so you'd have the maintenance investigator over here, and you'd have like a set of tools and like stud finders or shit. I just depart my French. My goodness. Oh, we're off to a great start. Uh, but yeah, that's where maintenance would have spawned. Okay. And then getting over to here is the main corridor. Over here, starting off here, is where the secure access node or the mainframe access point would have been. So during, I think it's, yeah, Sierra Delta is where you'd come over here and then go down this elevator and then through another set of doors to get into the mainframe access point. And that's where you'd be safe during the meltdown or the Sierra Delta event. My mind's all over the place, so if I say something wrong, I do apologize. And this is actually the only instance in this version where you see the keycard reader, or in any of the NSMRS versions, because the other ones have the giant bulky one by the airlocks, or the not by the airlocks, the blast doors and the auxiliary control room. But this is the more refined version, which I end up using never again. Oh yeah, this is actually yes, coming in the never up. This was a joke during development, but it's actually kind of sad that it came into reality. So whoever put that there predicted the future a bit too well. But, I don't know, some people say they could have seen this coming from a mile away. And yes, obviously authorized personnel only with the door just widely open. I'm sure people will listen. But over here we have the turbine hall. Over here is the turbine hall control center. Yeah. I think those are tables, but they're no longer tables, they're just pieces on the floor. But either way, 5 screens. PCU1. Yes, me creating my own terminology again. But yeah, bunch of low pressure turbines, like 12 by the looks of it. And then an enunciator board. I'll focus on it for people if they want to look at that, but yeah. I don't know. Like looking at these models now, they're not realistic in the slightest. And the other funny thing is that the turbine hull, or this turbine hull, is bigger than the reactor chamber itself. Like I've done the measure, like I went ahead and did the measurements during development. This is bigger than the reactor chamber itself, which is kind of sad, but at the same time kind of funny. Over here's the transformer bay, which I planned on never building because those models looked complicated and I didn't feel like building them, so I just put it behind a locked door and said that it was going to be there. Uh, and then we have a bunch of breakers that have individually labeled stuff. The electrical grid has its own fuse, so I guess this would be like the giant safety breaker with its fuse tolerance set all the way up. So I guess the logic or the path of logic that I was using is that fuses could have had a variable tolerance. That might exist IRL, I don't know. But either way, it's that, and then you'd have the master power switch, which would just be like active or tripped. Tripped would be like right there where my cursor is, and then recently you'd have to push it down and then push it back up. But I think the source would also have to be locally disabled first. But yeah, you have your elevator system, the reactor equipment, the facility lighting, the bottom side labs, the top side labs, the blast containment system, the automated equipment, coolant pumps, AFAL fuel pumps, electrical grid, and yeah. And then these are just a bunch of voltage regulators that I'd use the exact same model because why not? Alright, over in here in the turbine hall, that's just giant because why not? We have the turbines that make absolutely no sense logically. So yeah, each of these would have been pressure or PCUs, or pressure conversion units. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this, but yeah, generally speaking, the logic was that the steam would come in through here, go through here, and as you can see, they junction here in the middle because I didn't know how turbines worked realistically speaking. So they just intersect with the main shaft intermittently here. And then there's like no generator, or the generator is just tiny. And then the rest of it just goes up to the cooling tower, I think was the plan. And yeah, no condenser because condensers are stupid or something. I will say though that this room is very symmetrical and a bit too big for my liking. Actually, there's another Easter egg in here that Hywell added in. Where it's just him, yeah, it's right here. Where it's just him sitting on the ledge with cheese. So, yes. I might use this for the video thumbnail, actually. But, yeah, that's this room. Overly big for its purpose, but, yeah, and 4 turbines, my goodness. Actually, does the admin panel still work? Oh, look, it does. Oh, actually, it's a bit, yeah, whatever. We're not going to use that anyway. Just sure the logic behind it is also a bit broken. Over here are the cooling pumps, and then over in here would have been, oh, okay, this is supposed to be blocked off. Oh, right, well, in here would have, or like down here would have been where the AFAL fuel pumps are, so the fuel for the power lasers would have been held in like some sort of reservoir down there, and you'd be able to go down there and, I don't know, mess with the pumps and stuff. Don't know why you need to do that, but yeah. The coolant pipes are behind this glass or something. Placeholder bricks. Gotta love them. And two Portal 2 style cooling pumps, centrifugal pumps, whatever you want to call them. I think the plan was to have these both electronically driven and then steam driven, which is why there's a steam line running straight through the motor. Why not? Yeah, so 2 pumps would have been sufficient apparently. Again, a door that doesn't actually door. I think in here is just a storage room, but I can't get in there anyway. I think I can get in from the other side, actually. There's a double door over there. But, yeah. Giant room. Again, poorly lit up, actually, but, whatever. One of these is the reserve tank. This is the primary coolant tank, and that's the reserve tank. As you can see, they hold up to that much water. So, apparently that's how much water the reactor needs. But, yeah. And then yeah, you'd be able to get into the coolant tank for repairs, if I recall correctly. So, yeah. I don't know, probably to fix padding or something, or like fix like a pump for like an internal pump in there or something. And down here, you'd also have like a gate to get in with like a forklift or something. I don't know why you'd need that, but don't know what this pipe actually does. It sort of just runs between both of them. And then there's a elevator here that doesn't work. Yay. Let's see here. That's everything in this room at least. And then yeah, there's a double door right here. Which goes there, and then over here, I don't know actually remember what was the plan with that direction. But this would have been like a storage room for stuff. I don't know what stuff, but it would have been a storage room for stuff. I don't think I can actually get up to the control room, like with my character, so we're gonna have to fly up here. But yeah, as you can see, screen that shows the strain and the coolant efficiency. I think temperature was also going to be like somewhat simulated, so cooling temperature would drop over time, and then you'd have to switch over to the second tank to let it recool or something. And the pumps could either be put into pump mode or recool mode or recirculation mode. So, though I don't know how that would help with recooling the coolant, but yeah, whatever. Then yeah, there's the primary coolant tank, the reserve coolant tank, which the water's only being held at negative 72 degrees Celsius. Though realistically speaking, that water's supposed to be preheated. I don't know. We're going to ignore the logic for the most part. If you hear random sounds in the background in game, that's just Mocha poking around. It's fine though. 335 kPa system. My goodness. But yeah, that's the control room. Actually, there's one more thing here. We go over here. There is a pizza box. And then chairs to sit down. And then also a beacon. Riveting. Oh my goodness. And pipes. Oh boy. There's like no support structure on the wall for them. I'm like, wow. Then that's straight up there. But yeah. Shift P. There we go. Yeah, just have to make sure I didn't kill my stream again. Moving back, going back. I think we've explored everything on this, yeah, everything in this corridor. So if we go over here now, we have another intermittent storage room. This elevator actually goes, or was going to go straight up to a warehouse on the surface. Those yellow lights actually you see there, they designate a bulkhead. The idea was that during a situation where lockdown would need to be enabled, these would either slide down or retract, or during an emergency situation, they would literally just collapse. Like, these bulkheads would be designed to crush them if need be. But yeah, up there is... Looks like there's something, but I don't think that's supposed to be anything up there. I think, yeah, it's just the cable things. Very interesting looking models, but we're gonna move on. And then down here we have the bottom side labs. Like I said earlier on, we can't actually get into any of these, so I'm gonna have to free cam my way in here. But here we have the hazmat suit modifiers, which you'd be able to like change the color and like how long you can stay in the airlock or like the chamber for prior to needing to leave to restock on oxygen. In here are scuba suits for whatever reason. There's a note actually here. And then desks to do it, and then a very interesting looking wrench. Over here we have electromagnetics with this machine. Now this is the most complex model in this. Hold on. This is the most complex model in this version of the game, I think. If I recall correctly, it was the inertial magnetic. Hold on. Yeah, inertial magnetic test bed. So you'd put like a Zenton cell in the middle there, and then you'd turn it on, and that would like simulate the electromagnetic forces present in the reactor structure or the lyser. And this would be part of the custom cell creation process. And then if it were to fail, the cell were to blow up, this entire area was designed to go into lockdown and then discharge the fire suppression system. As you can see, the CO2 fire suppression system. This is around the time I was actually learning about these things, so I was like, hey, we should implement that somewhere. So yes, that system technically does exist in this section of the map. As you can also see, the pipes are also designed to fall off when they're not supposed to. But, whatever. Down there actually is hydrogen fuel cells. So there's a machine, so you combine hydrogen and oxygen, and though I don't think that logic actually fits very well. I think that just makes water machine. Regardless, you were supposed to combine them, and then that would give you like a like car-like battery thing that you could use to charge your stuff, like other stuff you can mess with. Advancement in research. This area was never designed to actually be accessible. It was supposed to just be like a one-off gag where like you'd occasionally hear sounds or something coming from this room, and like occasionally an explosion would be heard over the announcement system, which was indicted to come from this room. So yeah, just a one-off gag. And then this was wireless energy transmission, which was also something I was learning about during development, where electricity could be passed through. Could be passed through the air via waves. And this is where the battery pack sort of come into effect, where you would be able to like plug one of these in and then see that in real time, which I thought was pretty cool. There's actually nothing significant on that control panel, I don't think. Let's check. Yeah, no, there's just a machine power and resync. Don't know what the resync switch would have done, but yeah. Radiology. So yeah, if you wanted to blast yourself with neutrons, this is where you do that. You could walk into here, and someone would from in there would like close the door. And over here could I think that was power level unstable. So yeah, if you wanted to blast someone with neutrons, this is how you do that. You'd basically lock yourself in here, or someone would lock you in here, and then with these other things, like these also have like small radiation sensors or Geiger counters, whatever you want to call them. And then after a few seconds, this thing would drop from the ceiling somewhat. It would drop from the ceiling and then start spinning up, and that would discharge neutrons into this room. and that would make your radiation levels go up. And then eventually, I think it would either stop automatically if someone, yeah, if it would either stop automatically or after a certain threshold, it would stop, or people would, you'd be putting your, frick, 1 second. It would either stop automatically or you'd be at the mercy of whoever's at the control panel there. Then after the sequence is done, the radiation dampeners would drop from the ceiling and also do their thing. So that's what that was. Then over here we have access to manufacturing annex. Manufacturing was actually something that was put into the plan very late. By the looks of it, it's been mostly compromised, actually, unfortunately. But yeah, that was gonna be another thing. But that was, I don't know, there was never really a actual model. It was really just like a floor, a giant empty box. I think that was Box's idea anyway to implement. So, but yeah, there's another warning saying that this area is protected by a CO2 fire suppression system. Oh, actually, one more thing. Actually, in here is a small thing that this is the area would have been used to control the stuff that happens down here. And then over in here is the fire suppression equipment. So yeah, you got 5 CO2 tanks, a system pressure gauge, and then the system detection, or the detection system. So yeah, it says it's armed, the detection is clear, and agent capacity is 100%. So that means, yeah, obviously tanks are fully full. Yay. Um, but yeah, that's everything here. And then over here is where the renewable energy stuff is. So in here we learned about solar panels and wind turbines, and a low quality solar panel model. But this was like these two drawings I'm actually kind of still proud of. These were drawn in Krita, I think, by me with a mouse. I still draw stuff with a mouse. But yeah, little drawings to like better simulate the idea, or like implicate the idea that this was like drawn with a Sharpie on the board or a marker on the board. And then yeah, fundamental stuff. Yeah, photovoltaic. Wow, look at you using words that you don't even know. I still don't have a firm understanding of that word. I just looked up how solar panels worked and then like grabbed the first thing that I saw, which probably isn't the best practice, but hey, I didn't know better. The gearbox lifts turning velocity from 13 to 1500 RPM. How? Okay, well, automatically orientated take. Okay, you know what? I don't feel like learning. Today is not a day for learning. But yeah, that's what's in there. As well as that stack of boxes. In here is the main room where you'd be able to make custom cells. So over by the fuel processing station, you'd be able to make your custom cells there after doing a like small rundown, like this small step process. I don't even know. Basically, you'd go over here, create your own Zenton variant, run it through all the tests, and then if it passes all those tests, you're able to make it via the Zenton fuel processor to be used in the reactor. If that makes sense. So first off, you'd create a fuel variant via the fuel processing. So yeah, you'd mix the different injectants, and then grab the cell and then run over here. You test the fuel conditions. So I think, yeah. So yeah, you'd run over here, throw the cell in here, and then you'd begin it. You'd press begin, and this would do something. I don't know what exactly it would do, but I think it would. Yeah, you know what? I don't know what that would do, but yeah, you throw it in here, it would do the condition testing. Next, you test the electronegativity, how it responds to electronegative negativity. That's incorrect. Electromagnetism is what it's supposed to be testing, but yeah, sure. Then you test the combustion rate, which would be over here in the washing machine looking things. I think this is you, and then, yeah, there's a warning down there that says that uses 5% of capsule capacity. But you don't need to run, but you wouldn't be able, or you wouldn't need to run through this every time you wanted to use the cell. Like after running through this set of tests, you get to save it as a preset. Um, but yeah, you'd put it in there, run the combustion test. What it would do is it would just, I don't know, again, a emulate the temperature conditions inside the reactor containment chamber or reactor containment vessel, and then yeah, and then yeah, after a few minutes, once it's taken to like 5% of the capsule capacity, then it sort of knows whether or not the capsule has like a good efficiency rating. Like I'm pretty sure if it's the efficiency rating wasn't good enough, then it just wouldn't let you make the cell, or the test would have failed. Um, but yeah, that's how you would go about a cell. You'd make a variant in the field processing, bring it over here, run a test through here, run it over there again to the inertial magnetic test bed, run it back over here to that thing. I think, right? Yeah. You'd run it to the washing machine looking things, and after that, you can customize it via those things. And then you'd be able to use that as a preset. So, good jokes. But, yeah, that's how you'd go about that. I think that's almost everything there is to show in this version. Or, yeah. Down here is actually one more thing. This is actually just where the vanadium enrichment Zenton generator would have been, which is our spin on Foxtrot 9. If you still haven't gotten the message, a lot of TMU was just ideas uh, stolen from QSurf. Because I saw how good they were doing, like, hey, I can do that because NSMRS is just as good. And it's actually kind of disappointing because that statement couldn't have been more true, because when they came out with the Kerman update, people kept saying that, like, hey, it looks like NSMRS. And I do kind of feel bad for Speedy and the gang because they started actually getting pissed off because of it. Not at us, but at the people who kept saying that. And I can kind of understand it, cause uh yeah, I think that's the other thing. NSRMS to a lot of people was just like a not I don't know. Some people think it was a cheaper version of QSR, but I think for a lot of people it was also like a more playable version of it. Um, but I don't like to delve in it too much. Before I wrap things up, I'm just gonna quickly run down how this thing would have worked. Um, Basically, I think it uses vanadium in its liquid state to cool the Zenton down, and then through some form of process of the different elements, you'd be able to like amplify the amount of Zenton somewhere in this containment thing. Like there was like technically speaking, you can't create Zenton lore wise. Well, technically you can, but like directly create it you can't. You'd have to use a little bit of it, and then you'd have to use a process like this to amplify the amount you have. So you'd always need a bit of it to make more instead of creating more from nothing. But yeah, this thing also had a chance of blowing up somewhat. I think the way it worked is that if you run it on high power for too long or too much, the cooling loop would stop working properly, and you'd have like 90 seconds to get out of here before the intermittent bulkhead closed and this entire area was blown to smithereens until the next server restart or something like that. There's actually a small warning, or there was a warning. I don't know where. Oh, there it is. Blast containment bulkhead in place. This elevator passes through a containment shield designed to isolate potential devastation from this VexG operation sublevel. The system will not operate if blast shield is active. So, yeah. If you see people leaving here, chances are you shouldn't go down there. And obviously, it has to have a project name, so it was under the name Project Milo, sent an initiative. This does tie into Nova's lore, but I don't feel like going to Nova's lore right now because that's also its own can of worms, and I keep changing it, and I'm not very consistent with it. So we're not going to. But I think that's everything there is to show about TMU or what could have been TMU. If people still have questions or want to see certain aspects, or yeah, if you have questions, I guess we can do like a Q&A video maybe next at some point. Just put those in the comments, I guess, or just DM me on Discord. If you haven't gotten the message regarding how NSMS development is currently going, it's currently paused. Well, discontinued, technically still. But I sort of do have plans to like sort of do a facelift and come back to this. Maybe not in this like TMU, like this is all outdated at this point. Like I'm trying to, but I want to rebuild everything. But I don't know when we're gonna get to that. Riverton is probably next. Well, actually, no. Riverton's probably gonna come before this, simply because it's more modernized in the code base and easier to work with. But eventually, down the pipeline, I do want to come back to NSMRS and maybe bring it back to its glory days, because right now it's unfortunately not there anymore. As always, Monolith is now in charge of development. Nova's completely dissolved. So if you do have questions or something, just join the Monolith server and throw it in dev Q&A, and I'll see if I can get to it. Other than that, that's basically what everything I have to show off. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, and yeah, see you in the Q&A if that happens.